What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday, and today we are going to be talking about the cost of three modes, right? These triple changer cost increase. We're also seeing cost or price increase rather with some of their standard stuff, right? So we're going to talk about it. You guys wanted to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to try to stay objective. I am going to throw my feelings in it at some point because why else would we be here, right? And a lot of this stuff is just sort of looking at the temperature, looking at the landscape, looking at the playing field, and trying to deduct where this would come into play, right? How the numbers would work out. If you know me or you listen to Nerd Rage, you'll know that I am obsessed with numbers, even though I'm not very good at math. Horrible, in fact. Let me check on you guys, make sure everybody's good. Anybody having an issue? Everybody staying okay? Complicated times, make sure both your body and your mind remain healthy. But first, a little house cleaning. I do have to comment on the Dummies video this week just a little bit. Like, people saying that there isn't a drought. Like, that's not true. I guess it ultimately comes down to what you collect, but it's also just not reasonably true. Like, the factories are affected, shipping is affected, the shipping process and receiving process is affected. Like, things are different. Surprisingly, I don't have a whole lot to say regarding what happened to the G1 3P MP stuff. Most everybody kind of got where I was coming from on that. Some of the comments got a little, I feel like, left of center in regard to just how good the Hasbro stuff is and whether or not I use the right prime and all that. Look, the point is just to show that the aesthetic choices are getting closer to the G1 model. If they get even closer, it just goes to further prove my point. That's definitely a tactical decision being done on their part. They wouldn't do it for any other reason other than to capitalize on that market. Now, a lot of people have mentioned the success of all the Bayverse stuff. The Dummies are getting into that here soon. So we'll address that with the Dummies here very shortly. And then one last thing to talk about. So last week I did the evolution of the Black Series video, right? And I had a comment that was just like, well, Disney's Star Wars is not good. It's like, look, I'm sorry you feel that way. And I mean that sincerely. But that's not what this video is about. And if your only purpose for coming here was to say something negative about it, why bother? We have to be able to be both objective and subjective. You guys know I don't like Beast Wars. I can also simultaneously say that it's probably the best written Transformers show with perhaps the exception of Prime. You guys know I'm not crazy about the Bayverse, but I can also objectionably say that the 2007 film and the Bumblebee film are the best of the series, and inside of that, I think that they're both decent movies about transforming robots from outer space. I just don't think they're the best Transformer movies. But more importantly, at the end of it, I always say if you like it, you win. I'm not here to turn anything that you love into something negative. In fact, I celebrate it if you're happy for it, because you get more out of it. You win and I lose, which is why if you're happy, you win. One last thing before we get started, be sure to check out the t-shirt stuff. Always trying to put new designs up on there. I haven't done anything recently because I try to do them for con season, and as you know, con season is going to be different for a while. But the link to that is in the description. Feel free to check it out. I'm actually going to get that fourth party one myself, so let's get started. So what happened? The answer to that is that the Thomas pre-orders went up, and I'm just going to use BBTS as our main litmus test here for prices. They're the largest Western Transformer retailer when it comes to third-party stuff, so we'll just use them as a standard. If I say a price, don't tell me that so-and-so has it for cheap. It's irrelevant. Or more expensive. Also irrelevant. BBTS put up the pre-order prices for Astro Train, and that Astro Train pre-order price, the Fanstoys one, Thomas I believe he's called, was $209.99. Now, people are comparing that to the Blitzwing pre-order price that was around $145. So let's talk about the one element of it and get that out of the way, which we've kind of already addressed. And that is, the world is slightly different, right? So there are going to be more shipping fees. There are going to be more complications in regard from having it start in China and having it end up at your doorstep in Wyoming. That process is not the same anymore. It's different. That being said, I don't think it accounts for the pricing, but it does account for a portion of it. So let's acknowledge that we should perhaps expect the price to be slightly more than it was before, maybe $10, maybe $15, and then we'll take that. This is $50, $60 more, so we'll take that and we'll just move it to the side as something that we have acknowledged, and now we can just move on. So shipping, price of production, probably on the up. Not that much on the up, but probably on the up. Noted. Now, things have changed dramatically in regard to this conversation since that pre-order first went up. But let's talk about it and break it down the best we can. For one, many people were concerned that the Blitzwing price would go up. Unfortunately, this video came at the time it did, where most pre-orders have already been taken down. However, I'll also say that I have a pre-order in at a major US retail just as a safety, and it's still there. The listing isn't there, but it's noted as still being there. So it'll be interesting to see who honors those prices at the end of the day. I'm guessing that they got taken down to adjust the pricing for later, or that the product is just not coming, but I would guess the former. If I were to have given you advice beforehand, my advice would have been, look, go ahead and pre-order now at a place where you don't have to put down any money and lock in your price, or at least make an attempt to do so. Perhaps they say, well, there's no locking in the price, but hey, at least you tried. I would imagine that they would at least allow you to cancel if they change the price. But I do think that we are seeing a price increase across the board. Sheridan is at $99.99, which to me is probably about $20 more expensive than it would have been a year ago. Wild Rider, for instance, was $104, but now we're getting limb bots for our combiners that are going upwards of $130. But in addition to that, let's talk about why these products might be going up in price. I know he said it's not the case. I'm just telling you what I heard. The same way I heard that he said it's not the case, same way I heard that it definitely is the case. But that he's trying to get a factory, right? That Fanstoys is trying to occupy a factory. If that's the case, I'm okay with spending more money for your product if it goes to support the product to make you be able to produce more. Second, complicated times, higher risk at doing what you're doing. I'm okay with that. And the third option is perhaps just greed, right? Greed because you have a good, strong product, you know that it'll sell, it's sold out, so you can raise the price a bit more. That's my least favorite, but I understand it. There's never been a company out there that's had a super strong product that's like, you know what, let's take it down $5 this year. You good with that, Jim? You good with that? That's what it is. Business. I understand. I get it. So, who sets the price? And how much of it has actually changed? Which brings us to a screenshot that came from TFW, from the Fanstoys folks, right? And their positioning or posturing was basically to say, well, the wholesale price here in China is $130. Okay, I can believe that. So, let's take that into account, right? $130. They're not going to pay for the shipping of it. It's going to come freight to the West, and I would imagine that the West is going to pay for the shipping. So let's take this up to $140. $145 maybe, but I think $140 is safe. So now the wholesale price in the United States becomes $140. I think, unfortunately, that his posturing is suggesting that the greedy American retailers might be throwing up all this money on it. But let's look at the margins, right? In my opinion, the general amount of profit thrown on this stuff by the West is about 50%, right? So let's say that it is $140 per unit. You guys know I get obsessed with the numbers. $140 per unit. BBTS has it for $209.99. 50% times $140 is $70. $70 plus $140, $210. And that's if my prediction is correct. Let's look at Berserk. Berserk, I believe, was 100 wholesale. What's 100 times 50%? That one I can do. It's 150. Now, 150 to 145 is a $5 increase. We have to pay for more complicated shipping now. $5 difference. The margins remain the same for the West, if my numbers are correct. Which I'm not saying they are, but I am saying they line up and make sense. Now, the other question that I have in regard to this thing sold out everywhere. Everywhere. Quick. Now, either we all want this figure really bad at this price point that many of us seem to be complaining about, or there's less of them being made, and I'm not sure which is which. But I did want to tackle this while we were having a conversation about Thomas. If less are being made, and they're producing more figures, and when I say more, not more of the same character, but more unique releases, meaning a figure a month or so, and the constant kind of Fanstoys complaint is that it takes too long for them to put out figures, which is horseshit, by the way. But it is a very common complaint. Could they possibly be sacrificing numbers of produced units in order to produce units faster? Just something I'm throwing out into the ether. Not sure if it's true. I don't have information on those numbers in regard to specifics, so I can't really comment on it. It's just something I've been kicking around as a fan. But let's get back to business. You know that I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for distributors. I don't. But I do have an acknowledgement and understanding of business, and that they are in this to make money and provide for their families, and they are providing a service, and we should be happy that they are doing as such, as long as they are being good to us in return. It's the give and take relationship of business. If this thing is $130 wholesale in China, there's no way they could sell it at $145 like they did Berserk. American retailers are going to have to take into account the increase in shipping costs that I imagine are out there, the freight costs, office space, packing, materials, warehouse, and if they're big enough, probably employees. That can't be done with a $15 profit point. That's just not how the world works. So I say all that to say this. I'm not holding the retailers responsible for the price increase here. If I'm holding anybody responsible, I'm holding Fanstoys. But I hold them responsible, but I don't care because I don't think it's an unfair price. We'll get back to that. What I don't like about this situation is the posturing of, well, I don't know what those wacky American American retailers are up to. Look at them, that's 130 here. I just don't like that. I think there's a number of different ways that they could account for that price without saying it's the American retailers, just putting some sauce on it. Why is it so expensive in the United States? Why could this be? Well, because let's say that the wholesale is true and we're paying for shipping, it's $140, somebody's got to eat off of that. If it's 130 wholesale and we're paying for the freight shipping of it, it's 140 on average, I'm guessing a figure, and now we got to sell it for $145 plus shipping? Doesn't make sense. Especially when the margins are so similar in regard to what the estimated amount is for the wholesale, right? The only thing inconsistent is the wholesale price, and that's not an American retail issue. That's a Fanstoys issue. But I say that to say this, I'm okay with the price, and I'll tell you why. These were $200 a pop. I have a feeling that both Berserk and Astrotrain are going to be about as big and probably more complicated. Probably a higher parts count. Certainly more involved engineering. The only thing I was shocked about throughout this entire thing was that Berserk went up for $145. I was like, well, that's a steal. $200, $210? That sounds about right to me. These were $200, right? I haven't lost my mind, have I? And the engineering and stuff for these are pretty simple. Part of the reason that made them really great. But that's not going to be the case with these triple changers. And I'm not here to tell anybody how they do business. But I think the appropriate thing would have been to say, look, they're far more complicated in regards to manufacturing than we initially expected. Astrotrain is going to be more. Berserker will probably be more. The wholesale price is going to be about a 40 to 45% increase. And therefore, it's going to pay out on the back end to the consumer at about a 40 to 45% increase in regards to your wallet. It's all consistent except for the wholesale price. If my numbers are right. But I would have paid $250 for Astrotrain or $250 for Blitzwing. I just want them that bad, and I like the quality of that company's product. I paid $250 for a Hot Toys. To me, a figure this size, like that's like a Hot Toys Grimlock to me, you know? I don't know. If you don't like it, don't buy it. If you think it's too expensive, don't buy it. Speak with your wallet. I'm getting it, and I hope I like it. But more importantly, I hope you're being safe. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.